Throughout NBA history, there are certain points that you could call turning points. Times where the NBA was shook so much that it fundamentally changed the NBA as a product. One of them was the ABA merger, another would be the addition of the three-point line, and aside from gradual changes in rules and certain players changing the game on the court, it has been a long time since a singular event changed the product so drastically. And well, I think the time has come. I think what we're experiencing right now could be that next one.
And Clyde, we're just getting the word in our headphones from our producer Spencer Julian about some very sobering news. The NBA has decided to suspend game play following the conclusion of tonight's games. Now, during the hiatus of the suspension, they'll figure out and try to determine what the next steps will be. But the word that just came out just moments ago is the NBA is going to temporarily suspend the season from now. Who knows what's going to happen going forward.
On March 11th, 2020, the NBA decided to suspend the season due to the coronavirus outbreak. But today, I want to simply talk about the proposed NBA plan of return and the ripple effects that could happen because of it. But before we move on, can I get some love on the Blame It On Baby inspired thumbnail? Come on now. It looks pretty clean. Let's try to get this video to 4,000 likes. Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. It only takes 2 seconds and it helps me keep making content like this for you guys. But with that being said, let's get started. So in case you haven't heard or read about, there have been some emerging details on the NBA's plan of return. And to make your life easier, I'll just summarize everything in terms of how I read everything. So correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. So from everything I've gathered, it looks like the plan is for the NBA to open facilities for practice in late June and play somewhere from 5 to 10 games at a bubble site, possibly Las Vegas, possibly Disney World Orlando, in mid-July before moving on to the NBA playoffs right after. Now, the NBA playoffs, assuming they keep the same format and the space between the games the same, typically goes from late April to late June. And 5 to 10 NBA games based on, again, a typical NBA schedule roughly takes around a week for 5 games and 2 weeks for 10. So using these estimations and the proposed NBA plan, the NBA playoffs would be set to start in early August and ending in early October. And can I just say, that is going to be so weird? Imagine watching the NBA finals in October. That's going to be real weird. And while cool, the 2019-2020 season will have some closure to it, the question is, at what cost? Would it be worth it for the NBA? Because if this is going to be the proposed schedule, there is no way the NBA will give teams merely a month of off-season before the season starts back up again. So the NBA has two choices. The NBA could either start the new season somewhere in January or February and have the typical 82-game season and everything that comes with that, or it could start in January or February like I said, but instead of going through a full 82-game season, they could shorten the next season as well in order for the playoff to start and end when they normally do. And because of these choices, the NBA has a tough call to make because whatever they decide on could have such a huge impact on the league. And aside from those two options, technically they still have another one, and that is to cancel the whole season. But if they do that, we're going to have players complaining about playing 60 games for nothing and having no closure at all, which is completely understandable. I mean, if I was LeBron, I'd be mad too. This is the best chance I've had at a title in 4 years. Or if I was the Bucks management, I mean, Giannis's free agency is just looming over their head and they don't have the opportunity to win a championship when winning a championship seems like Giannis's biggest priority. I would be mad too. But let's talk about the two options I mentioned earlier. So like I said prior, they could start in January or February and go through a regular 82-game season. And if they go this route, that would mean that the season wouldn't end until August or September. And if they go this route, this essentially changes the NBA yearly cycle forever to start in January or February. And that would be an extremely hard change to reverse. And going even further, that could have a very lasting impact in how the NBA draft works, again, if they decide to go this route. Because typically prospects declare for the draft in April when the NCAA season is over. And again, based on everything I've read, I would assume that the NCAA won't be as affected scheduling wise and their season will just start and end when it usually does. And if that is the case, that would mean that when the NCAA ends, the NBA will be in its, first or second month into the season, and the NBA season won't end till the next academic year starts. How does that affect drafting? And again, like I said earlier, there's also the option of finishing the NBA playoffs and shortening the next NBA season. In this scenario, the NBA would go under the proposed playoff schedule of ending the season in early October, starting back up in January, and finishing in June like usual. And again, assuming that they don't cram the schedule like they did in 2012, that would mean that the NBA would roughly cut out 2 months worth of games, which roughly translates to 30 to 35 games, meaning in this scenario, the 2021 season would be shortened to around 50 games. This scenario is probably the only scenario where the NBA ends up with a yearly champion like it usually does, without creating a very hard to reverse change in the yearly NBA cycle. But the con with this scenario is that despite having 2 champions like it usually does and not affecting the yearly cycle of the NBA schedule for the long run, this will come with the price of compromising 2 seasons instead of 1, unlike the other options. Either way, no matter what avenue the NBA takes, it seems like NBA history will be changed forever. The 2020 championship is just gonna have such a weird asterisk to it, and no one even knows if it's a good or bad one. On one hand, everyone's gonna be healthy and it gives people time to rest their bodies and train even more. But take this into consideration. If the NBA starts back up in July and the NBA was suspended in the middle of March, the gap between those 2 dates is the same gap as a regular offseason. And we all know how much players can get better or worse in that time span, which again is another part of the asterisk. And also, what about those teams that were able to build chemistry and have tremendous momentum leading into the playoffs before everything went down, like the Lakers, the Bucks, and even the Rockets, Celtics, and Clippers? Now all that momentum is gone and they have to build it from scratch. But let's go ahead and harken back to that shortened 2021 season proposal, because the NBA could really use this season as a justification to add some more changes to the game than they can just put under pandemic reasons. For example, a simple one they can make is just make the first round a 5-game series. Because let's be honest, as fun as the playoffs are, does the first round really have to be 7 games? So that's one example. But one change that I think will actually gain a lot of traction in its discussion as a permanent change, if they decide to do it, would be really shortening the season for future seasons.
Some big changes could be on the way for the NBA. The association's in serious talks with the Players Union on some big moves, including major changes to the season schedule and to the playoffs, some of which could happen as soon as the 2021-2022 season.
I think we have to step back again collectively as a league working together with the players and their union, and decide, do we have the right number of games? Because, again, the game has changed in dramatic ways, especially over the last decade. And if players can't fairly play in all those games, maybe the schedule's too long. Yeah. And maybe we got to take a fresh look at how we structure the season. The fan has to be first. And at the end of the day, the fans vote every day by deciding whether to listen to your telecast or watch us on television or buy tickets. And I got to be very careful here. This is a fragile ecosystem, and if ultimately the fans are saying, we're not going to pay for those games or we're not going to watch those games where your players aren't playing.
As you can see, this was something that's been already discussed in the past. Players have been known to coast in the regular season because of the sample size of the big season, and many have argued that this has damaged the NBA product as a whole, and there's also the issue of fatigue and injury risk with a long 82-game season. There are many people who believe that shortening the season will lessen the stress on the players, which will produce less injuries and inevitably a better product and a slightly better playing field. Me personally, I've been a supporter of shortening the season, even before the pandemic and everything happened. I mean, I love the NBA, but if there's one thing I like about other sports is that for leagues that have relatively short seasons, every game counts so much and there's so much excitement going into every game, even in the regular season. That's what makes the NCAA and the NFL so successful, especially the NFL. I mean, it's a 16-game season. Every game really counts. But on the contrary, it's the opposite as to why I don't really like watching the MLB. Not only are the games really long, but the season is 162 games, I believe. Like, come on, man. Like, where's the thrill? Where's the excitement going into each and every game? The less games there are, the more each game counts, and that's just basic math. and the NBA right now has an opportunity to test out certain changes in real time to see if it'll actually be beneficial. Now, what I'm about to say is just my own personal opinion, and let me just emphasize, this is my own personal opinion. But I think the NBA really should just cancel the NBA season. Let's just call it a wrap. I've seen a lot of people recently make the argument that the NBA doesn't need fans to come back. That we'd watch the NBA without fans, or, we'd watch it with limited fans. But I'm sorry, not that it's unacceptable or anything, but I just come from the idea that the NBA really is an experience as a whole in the modern day and age. What's an NBA game without the fans? The fan interactions, the fan chants, the booing, the intensity, the pressure. This is what fans bring to games. Imagine the 2008 championship without the fans. Imagine the 2010 championship when Kobe jumps on the booth and he's just yelling into an empty stadium. The ability of the fans to celebrate with the players and the players to do the same with the fans is what makes professional sports. I mean, if we're being honest, that's the difference between a scrimmage in practice and a game. And like I said earlier, the 2020 season will have such a big asterisk on it. It's insane. All the momentum going into the playoffs, gone. And between the cancellation and the playoffs, there will be a whole regular offseason time gap that we just can't ignore. I mean, if the NBA does bring everyone back, these teams just aren't gonna be the same. They're gonna have the same rosters and everything, but there's a chance everyone's gonna be really different for the better or for worse. To put into perspective, in just a matter of one offseason, Bam Adebayo has gone from a 9-point and 7 rebound guy to a 16-point, 11 rebound and 5 assist guy. You've seen how much Luka and Trey and Jason Tatum have improved in that time span as well. A gap this big, especially given the circumstances and how players will be rusty, I mean, you just can't ignore that. Will the 2020 champions really be the 2019-2020 NBA champions? I mean, it's just weird. And knowing the fact that at least the next season will be compromised as well in the process, I mean, to me, that's just too much. And again, I want to emphasize, I feel terrible for the players who were dominating this season, especially the title contenders, because we know that's never a guarantee. Like, players like Tracy McGrady spend their whole careers just trying to have one season with title aspirations. And for that chance to be taken away from the Lakers, the Bucks, and these other teams, I mean, it's brutal. All these choices at the end of the day are not ideal. I mean, this is why Adam Silver gets paid $10 million a year, to make decisions like this and be the face of the league and be held responsible for everything. But at the end of the day, whatever decision the NBA makes, I just hope they keep the safety of everyone a priority. The first one at that. The NBA made the executive decision of suspending the season for the safety of everyone, from the fans to the players to the staff, and everyone else followed their lead. I just hope they're not bringing back the NBA season for revenue reasons. That's all I hope. But with that being said, before we head on out, a big announcement. I'm getting back in the podcast game. I'm going to be starting a podcast with 4 of my close friends called Let's Keep It a Buck. And I know for those of you who have been supporting me for a while, y'all know about the original one, and I've decided I'm bringing it back. Fine. If you don't want to relive everything that happened, that's cool. But to say that the documentary put you in a bad light, they were just stating facts. He signed a 7-year contract for $18 million. A terrible contract that his own agent said he shouldn't sign, and he still did it. And hopefully, the plan is that it'll be better than ever. It'll give you a chance to know me more than just the basketball dude. So go ahead, check the link in the description for the podcast highlights channel to check out some of the best parts of the first episode so far. And if you like what you see, give us a listen on Spotify or Apple Music. But with that being said, watch these 2 videos on the screen if you haven't already. And I'm out. Peace.